Guess who's back on a brand new track that got everybody in the club going mad? So everybody in the back, get your back up on the wall and just shake that thing. Go crazy, yo lady, yo baby, let me see you wreck that thing and drop it down low, low. Let me see you take it to the dance floor, yo.
Let's look at them. This is most disturbing.
I gotta finish this song. Holy shit. Such a banger. It's already a banger then. The mashup's gotta, holy shit, elevate it. Oh my god, what a day. I'm tired. I'm alive. Nearly midnight. But we're here. We out here. I'm cold? Oh no, okay. Put on a jacket. Alright. Cryptic says, Zip Zip, I asked Darius in his chat to debate me in E-Court, but then banned me. But then he unbanned me after a minute. I don't think he knows what E-Court is. Huh. I mean, if you wanted to challenge him to a debate in the E-Court, probably figure that out. But debate him about what in the E-Court? I mean, yeah, if you wanted to let him know. Yeah, or if you like, if there's like a serious thing you actually want to do, maybe we can figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be cool. But yeah, Kev, you should put on a jacket if you're cold. Sorry to hear. Holy shit, debate me, Cryptic. Never mind, I already won. Damn, Cryptic, you just gonna take that from Kev? Sheesh. Wow. What a day. Apparently we might be going to war with Venezuela. Trump's moving a fuck ton of, like, aircraft carriers and fucking ships and fucking planes over to the fucking Caribbean, and apparently doing like training exercises in fucking Trinidad, which is literally off the coast of Venezuela. So who the fuck knows? Cryptic? No, I thought about it more and decided he probably shouldn't do it for his sake. He has to deal with IRL court. Yeah, that is true. We probably don't want to do e-court stuff that is like also actual legal stuff, but yeah. US troops gonna get one glimpse of the Venezuelan beauties and a taste of arepa, and it's over for us. I mean, not wrong, not wrong. I mean, arepa is fucking good. So, what are you gonna do? Could have someone in a pepia. It's over for them, you know. Holy shit, too good. Yeah, let's watch this pondering politics vid. Kind of recapping some stuff. And then I'll see if I can find some articles or something. Cause Jesus, I want to fucking know more about this. If this shit's actually happening, it's fucking insane.
Well, John, the Pentagon has been reallocating assets from the Middle East and Pacific, moving warships to the Caribbean since August in what looks like a major military buildup for what many fear is an undeclared war.
All right, folks, so we have more emergency breaking news, this time concerning
Breaking
the
news.
military. More specifically, a military buildup ordered by Donald Trump into the Caribbean, which this visibly stunned Fox News national security reporter Jennifer Griffin is describing as a major escalation and the signs of an undeclared war. This is big news. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, let's continue this clip and dive into some of the breaking news reporting about this.
Moments ago, the Pentagon announced that it is sending the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier strike group to the Southern Command region to help with counter-narcotics efforts. The Ford strike group right now is currently in the Mediterranean and will take at least 2 weeks to get there. This is the first time that the U.S. military will not have a carrier in the Middle East. For U.S. Southern Command, this is a massive buildup of force. In fact, 14% of the Navy's fleet is now in the Caribbean.
Like this is not like guys, you know, this isn't that good. You know, that's a lot of fucking shit that's moving in that direction. Jesus.
Caribbean, according to IEJ media, including a buildup of 10,000 Marines and sailors, a dozen warships, a U.S. Navy nuclear-powered fast attack submarine, the USS Newport News, a vessel that could be needed elsewhere, a special operations mothership with drone capabilities, and 3 guided missile destroyers, USS Stockdale, Gravely, and Jason Dunham, and the USS Iwo Jima, an assault ship.
Iwo Jima. Nice.
Part of an amphibious ready group. They left Naval Station Norfolk in August. The USS Lake Erie, a guided missile cruiser with 32 Tomahawk missiles, was pulled from the Pacific and is now operating near Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that sure seems like a major escalation.
Pretty much.
In force, 14% of that specific fleet. Yeah, not good. So let's take a look here.
A week ago, the head of the U.S. military Southern Command resigned. I think it's safe to say a week ago they told him what was about to happen. He resigned in protest. The New York Times article. I will definitely be opening that. I'll have to read that after this. Holy shit. Don't even understand the beef between Venezuela. Is it honestly just for their oil reserves? It's more complicated than that. It's not just for oil. I mean, it's true that Venezuela is living under dictatorship right now. Because of the shit conditions in Venezuela, it has caused a lot of immigration to the U.S. from Venezuela. A lot of illegal because of the shit conditions. People are getting like refugee status and temporary protected status under the Biden administration as well. Something that Trump has illegally removed from a lot of Venezuelans who came in under that. A lot of people getting asylum. But to Trump, it is just, oh, Venezuela's sending, people from their prisons and people from their mental institutions because he thinks an asylum, like he thinks when a person is granted asylum that that's a literal, like, insane asylum, that's the same thing. Also, Trinidad is a gang that does maybe have some activity in the U.S., not as much as they say it is, but, so apparently he sees that as a thing. Also, Trump wanted the Nobel Prize, and instead the Nobel Prize was given to the one of the leaders of the opposition in Venezuela. So that's a thing too. So he's like jealous. So maybe he wants to just one up it and be like, oh, if I'm able to liberate Venezuela, then I'll get the Nobel Prize. And what Crypto is saying, this is all happening because of the Epstein files, and I'm not understanding saying that Trump is psychotic and needs a human military adventure to distract on his failures. He goes to war and distracts everyone from his scandals. This is also true. He is just doing shit. The more he thinks the military is just a stick to swing around, and he wants to swing his dick around because he can't do anything else because he's a brainless retard, and so all he can do is just, oh, I'll just use the military, I'll send them to US cities, and then, you know what, let's use them against Venezuela too, why not? Also, I do believe many months ago, the Trump admin was in talks with Maduro of Venezuela to try to negotiate, like, returning some people to Venezuela, like to deport people to them, but they weren't able to come to an agreement, so that might have something to do with it. It might be a personal slight. It's just a lot of retarded shit. Yeah, it's not just oil. To say it's just about oil is a little bit, like, it's not a stupid thing to think, because obviously, like, oil, like the US, whatever, but it's not getting the full context of, like, all the stupidity that's involved in this. Like, if it was just as simple as oil, then, like, it'd almost be smarter, but it's so much stupider than that. Fudge, so it's all petty squabbles, kind of, yeah. Surely if he can start unprompted illegal wars, he can scrub the Epstein files enough to exonerate himself, though, no? Yeah, I mean, that too, but that's also the thing, like, they don't even want to have to talk about it. Like, even if shit is scrubbed, like, it's never going away for them. Even if they release some Epstein files and it doesn't have Trump in it at all, it's just gonna look more sus, right? So they can't even talk about it, and they don't have to, right? They don't have to, because why would they talk about it at all? Yeah, I don't think it was all because of oil. I just have not heard any rumors. Yeah, I'm not saying you think that, but just because I do hear that in other places as well, and it's just a bit of a simplification for the amount of stuff that's involved in this. It's not as simple as just oil. Same as, like, Iraq wasn't just oil. There's like a million different reasons. And, like, people will, like, say that, like, oh, the Middle East, like, our shit in there was just because of oil, and it's not really that simple either. USA's #1 oil producer in the world is never about oil, believe it or not. It wasn't even about oil during the Iraq invasion. America does not go to war for oil. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. We both got there, cryptic jinx. But yeah, it's never just about oil. Because we have a fuck ton of it. Granted, that doesn't mean that oil is never a factor. Like, this shit does matter, but it's not only that simple. Granted, that could be a factor because, and I'll say it is a factor. Venezuela has massive oil reserves, so certainly it would be of help to the Trump admin. So who the fuck knows? A few family members who were big on the Iraq was all about, yeah, and it's just a oversimplification. It was about way more than that. Like 9/11 obviously would be a big reason, but yeah, Okay, let's keep watching the video for a bit.
Justin, Hegseth sending aircraft carrier to Latin America's coast in major escalation. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is sending an aircraft carrier to the coast of Latin America in what's being called a major escalation of the Trump administration's war on alleged, quote, drug boats. The Pentagon will send the USS Gerald Ford to the area where the U.S. has been conducting military strikes on boats ahead of suspected of running drugs to on boats suspected
of
running jokes.
Yeah, maybe.
Jokes. Drugs to the U.S., according to the Associated Press, which called the move a major escalation. Again, it says something that they're pulling this out of the Middle East, right? Especially when you consider the very tenuous ceasefire that Trump
taking an aircraft carrier out of the Middle East, where like there's still a war happening, in order to send it to the Caribbean off of like Venezuela. Fucking just insane.
Brokered, which has already been violated. And yet they're deploying it in a 2-week journey to Latin America. We also talked about in a previous video a few weeks ago how Trump affected.
Eddie is afraid the Saudi stake investors will see it. Yeah, maybe. Just kidding. I would never say anything bad about Eddie. Eddie, give me a gambling deal or whatever the fuck.
Instructed Congress that he is declaring basically an undeclared war on the drug cartels of Venezuela and Latin America. Without going into vivid detail, he has not been forthcoming, according to reports, even to the relevant senators and Senate committees of jurisdiction. So it's not just the public who's being left in the dark.
That's not how it's supposed to fucking work.
The predominant.
Trump doesn't just get to, like, the president doesn't just get to go to war places, like, whenever he fucking wants to. You can't just kill people and make them dead. You have to fucking, you have to get permission from Congress, approval of Congress. Not even, like, Congress is the one that declares war. Like, this just is not how it works.
Branch, Congress, which is supposed to be the one that has the power to declare war, not the executive. So that's not good. Hegseth made a post about this on Truth Social. He says, overnight at the direction of Donald Trump, the Department of Defense carried out a kinetic lethal strike on a vessel operated by TDA, a designated terrorist organization trafficking narcotics in the Caribbean Sea. And again, offering no evidence other than just a video that the boat was
evidence?
struck. No
What's
one doubts
that
the boat was
for?
struck, but it's just like, where's your evidence? See if the Associated Press has any updates here. Let's see. Congress warily watches later U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, the drumbeat of deadly strikes and the alleged drug boats, and the tough talk from Trump about a possible land incursion into Venezuela are widely viewed in Congress, on both sides of the political aisle, as a potential escalation of military involvement in the region. Ahead of Friday's announcement that the U.S. military is sending an aircraft carrier to the waters off South America, Representative Adam Smith of Washington, the top Democrat in the House Armed Services Committee, said there is a growing concern on both sides of the aisle.
Both sides, even Republicans, are fucking concerned because it's not fucking good. The president's supposed to like seek approval from Congress for like military action,
which is what I was just talking about. Quote, who are these people? What's the plan? Smith told the Associated Press in an interview late Thursday. Quote, they're basically saying, drug dealers, we killed them, trust us, end of story, which, by the way, should never be the end of the story. Smith says, quote, has the whiff of extrajudicial killings.
Like evidence, source, like they're just like shooting fucking boats and saying that they're fucking drug boats, like source, evidence, like even like Congress has not been shown evidence that these are in fact actually all like drug boats that are smuggling drugs or some shit. Like it's insane.
Whiff? It's basically like a stench, and we are standing downwind. Remember, it's so important. Even if these people are whom the Trump administration say they are,
it's
that they're
still bad.
That's bad. Drug smugglers are not good, but they are still entitled to due process and civil liberties. They are not enemy.
Yeah, you fucking like. I don't know if you guys have seen videos, but like the Coast Guard and like the fucking Navy, they will board ships and they will like take people prisoner and they will confiscate like fucking illicit material, and they will fucking like this was supposed to happen. Like you don't just fucking bomb these ships. It's not what the fuck is supposed to happen.
Combatants, you were still obligated, according to both domestic and international law, to interdict and detain them and prosecute them. You are not supposed to be unilaterally killing them. And I will remind you that, again, we have no evidence of the drug smugglers in the first place. But number two, we also found out recently that there were survivors from a recent boat struck by the U.S. military, not in self-defense, but proactively. The U.S. military struck the boat. 2 people survived. The military sent them back to their country of origin.
Oh,
Wait a minute,
curious.
I thought these guys were terrorists that you were trying to kill. What the hell are you doing sending them? Like, I'm glad you didn't kill.
Because if you send them back, you don't have to hold a trial. You don't have to actually charge them with any crime. And they don't get to challenge their fucking detainment. If you just send them back,
Kill them, but like, you're inconsistent, right? Suggests like you're kind of full of shit, right? In the Senate, a bipartisan war powers resolution led by Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine that would block military action in Venezuela is heading towards a vote in the coming weeks. We'll see what happens because it's not looking good that Republicans will actually stand up to this shit. Warner, Heim, seek information about Caribbean strikes. The top Democrats on congressional intelligence committees are demanding information from the Trump administration's escalating strikes on drug-running vessels, which have killed at least 43 people. U.S. Representative Jim Hines of Connecticut and Senator Mark Warner of Virginia wrote to DNI,
Yo, what's up, CS?
Gabbard, asking about
Oilers,
the intelligence
Oilers
services
indeed.
role in the strikes. In the letter to Gabbard, the lawmakers wrote that the administration is withholding important information about the strikes and their effects, including the evidence that prompted the strikes and the justification for lethal force. Quote, please tell us in writing whether the intelligence community attorneys have independently analyzed the legality of these strikes and the potential for legal repercussions for IC personnel who support them, the lawmakers wrote. And, of course, Gabbard did not immediately respond to the letter because, of course, why would she? God, they think they can act with impunity. Pentagon spokesperson.
Yo, haven't been around much, life's been busy. All good, CS. It's good to see you, as always. Hope everything's okay, you know?
Person Sean Parnell announced the move on X, saying the deployment, quote, will bolster U.S. capacity to detect, monitor, disrupt illicit actors and activities that compromise the safety and prosperity of the United States homeland and our security in the Western Hemisphere. The warships will add to the 10,000 troops and dozen F-35 fighters which have been sent to the region over the last several weeks. Good God. The actions, which expanded into the Pacific on Thursday with an 8th strike, have killed dozens of people the Pentagon has labeled narco-terrorists. The administration has said the killings are lawful, but has not provided a legal rationale for the military's use of force against civilians who are not engaged in war.
I wonder why they haven't asked for the legal rationalization.
Trump said Thursday he's unlikely to go to Congress for authorization to conduct the strikes. Quote, I don't think we're necessarily going to ask for a declaration of war. We're just going to kill the people that are bringing drugs into country. They're going to be, like, dead. Again, this man has absolute...
The fuck? Got a 3rd, 4th job, lol, averaging 67-hour work weeks from now on. Gotta do what you gotta do. Jesus, CS. I mean, good for you, I guess. Get the fucking bag, but sheesh. It's a lot of fucking work. That's rough. Jeez. I'm happy for you, though, I guess. Damn.
Absolutely no interest, no regard, no consideration.
Don't work too hard, I guess.
Casual thought towards separation of powers and the usurpation of congressional power. I want to point this out.
Get some time for yourself.
We don't have 3 co-equal branches. We were never supposed to have 3 co-equal branches. We have 3 coordinate branches, 3 powerful and important branches, all of them. But there was a clear hierarchy. Congress was supposed to be more powerful than the president, and the president more powerful than the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was actually supposed to be, yes, powerful and important, but the weakest of the branches. And Congress was supposed to be the final hand on top, more powerful than the president. And yet, because of laziness and partisanship and authoritarian impulses like we see from Trump, which are unprecedented, the executive, for all intents and purposes, and the Supreme Court are running roughshod over Congress. The founders assumed that the members of the respective branches would be jealous and guard their own power. So if you were in Congress, it doesn't matter if you liked this particular...
The founders did not expect or want political parties, so they didn't expect that members of Congress of one party, even if they were of the party, they didn't expect they would give up their own power and their own oversight over the executive branch just because a cult leader got into the presidency. They didn't think it would happen, but here we are. Get the bag, but one is 40-hour full-time in office. Two I already have, but are fucked because construction, and I can work from home. Last one is like 10 15 an hour a week from home, also construction, so I can still hang out when I do the work from home stuff. Oh, damn, nice. I mean, still sounds like a lot, but I mean, good shit, I guess. I'm very thankful for a TLDR streamer who explains things for my dumb brain that is, hey, that's what I'm here for, CS. I will sum up some news for you and explain some stuff, because yeah, shit's pretty crazy, so it's good to, have somebody to talk about the news,
The president, you weren't going to let him run roughshod over you because you want the power for yourself. Well, as power hungry as lawmakers are, the Republican lawmakers are power hungry, yes, but that's secondary to their fear of Donald Trump. They'd rather have the title and avoid Trump's wrath than have the title and wield the power if the power involves risking Trump's wrath, because they don't feel they'll have the title that much longer because he'll successfully primary them. But folks, this is not good. Again, Fox News is stunned by this news, and that's not good.
As they should
you
be.
Consider how much Fox is in the bag for this administration. The fact that they're concerned should have you concerned. And I thought this was supposed to be the pro-peace, pro
no new wars, no new wars,
president.
guys. Remember?
Sure looks like we are heading for another war.
Remember when
In the
everyone's
meantime,
cared about
let me know
that?
what you think in the comments.
I don't remember that.
I'm joined now by Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Thanks so much for joining me.
Always has been. Oh, brother. Right, let's see this article. Ugh, I gotta make an account. Oh, brother. Hold on. Can I just... How do you get past this shit? I don't even remember. There's like you have to like get an archive link or something, right? Wait, who sent this again? Was it Fudge? Cryptic. Do you know how to get just a non-paywalled version of this shit? It's like incognito tab it or something. Can I just sign in with Google? I'll just try that. Hold on, let me hide the tab real quick. Let me just sign in with Google and see if that works. To just get access to like one article or something, Continue without subscribing. Does it let me? Boy, I have to like create some fucking shit. Jesus. Oh, there's like a whole fucking like thing. Okay, I can read the article now. Woohoo! Let's go. Okay, here we go. Okay. No new wars equals new wars plus Civil War Part 2 TBD. Yep, maybe. But I fucking hope not, but maybe. Okay, head of the U.S. military Southern Command is stepping down, officials say. Admiral Alvin Halsey is leaving less than a year into his tenure, and as the Pentagon escalates attacks against boats in the Caribbean Sea. Jeez. And was this article from October 16th, so yeah, like 9 days ago. Geez, so yeah, what you said, Cryptic, it's probably true. They told him that they were gonna do this, and he fucking resigned. Because he didn't want to fucking do it, because it's obviously fucking illegal. Jeez. Let's see. Military commander overseeing the Pentagon's escalating attacks against boats in the Caribbean Sea that the Trump administration says are smuggling drugs. So on Thursday, he was stepping down. The officer, Admiral Alvin Halsey, is leaving his job as head of the U.S. Southern Command, which oversees all operations in Central South America, even as the Pentagon has rapidly built up some 10,000 forces in the region, what it says is a major counter-drug and counter-terrorism mission. Ah, boy. It's unclear why Admiral Halsey is suddenly departing less than a year into what is typically a 3-year job, and in the midst of the biggest operation in his 37-year career. One current and one former U.S. official, both of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity, said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on the alleged drug boats. Saying on social media, Piagseth made no mention of any friction with him. Via the Department of War, we extend our deepest gratitude to Admiral Alvin Halsey for his more than 37 years of distinguished service. Nor did Admiral Halsey publicly voice any policy objections, urging his command's 1,200 military service members and civilians. Statement: keep charging. But other officials, Pentagon and Capitol Hill, said the previous masked real policy tensions concerning Venezuela that the admiral and civilian boss are seeking to paper over. Per Trump, I can't think of a combatant commander who left his or her post early ever, said Adam Smith of Washington, senior Democrat in the House Armed Services Committee, the guy from the Honoring Politics video that we just watched. I think that guy was in his article as well when he was reading. Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, the top Democrat in the Senate Armed Service Committee, was even more pointed in his criticism. Remember when U.S. forces are building up across the Caribbean and tensions with Venezuela are at a boiling point, the departure of our top military commander in the region sends an alarming signal of instability within the chain of command. Jesus. It's early September. U.S. Special Forces have struck at least 5 boats. Yeah, that was just 9 days ago. Where are we at now? 27 deaths. Range of specialists in the law covering the use of force disputed their claim that they can lawfully kill these people. They can't. It's a matter of law. Congress has not authorized any armed conflict. It's a matter of international law for a non-state group to qualify as a belligerent armed conflict to allow them to be killed. It must be an organized armed group with a centralized command structure engaging in hostility. So it has to be like an actual, like, basically like a military. A whole seat who's black becomes latest in the line of more than a dozen military leaders, many of them people of color and women who have left their jobs this year, most fired by Hegseth or pushed out. Jesus. It's fired. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, yawned. Charles Q. Brown Jr. was black, the first woman to command the Navy. And they're a military representative to NATO, so a woman. Also, Jeffrey A. Cruz, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, I assume also a minority. Yes. I'll just have not fit into the mold of what he considers a leader in his Pentagon. General David Alvin announced he would retire early, 2 years, into a 4-year term. And 2 weeks ago was the fucking unhinged speech to the military. He's talking about getting rid of the woke and toxic masculinity is based now. This is the admiral's departure comes a day after the New York Times reported the Trump administration had secretly authorized the CIA to conduct covert action in Venezuela. Yep, hard to believe that happened. Hard to remember because so much shit's going on, but Trump did approve the CIA to do action in Venezuela. So it's probably happening as we speak. There's fucking CIA agents in fucking Venezuela. I mean, realistically, they probably already were, but like they're like actually fucking doing shit now. So who fucking knows there too. Yup. Just fucking who cares? Just all memes. Any operation to intervene militarily in Venezuela, especially without congressional authorization, would be unwise and dangerous. Admiral Halsey's resignation only deepens my concerns as admin. It's ignoring the hardened lessons of previous military campaigns and the advice of our most experienced warfare. Yeah, they're not fuck. They don't give a fuck. Yeah, Jesus Christ, dude. Thanks for your article, Cryptic, because, yeah, it's fucking crazy. And that's absolutely why he fucking did it, because, like, yeah, they fucking, he saw the fucking writing on the wall. He's like, I'm not getting involved. I can't involve myself. So he resigned. CS says, like, I respect all these people standing for stepping down, sent on business, but also what psycho yes man will replace them? I mean, yeah, that is also a thing. Like, yes men will get in, and also you kind of, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. I'm gonna talk with Kafka at some point about it. I don't know whether I think, I mean, it's good that they quit, right? But I don't know if whether it's better for them to quit or force like their superiors to fire them. So if it's Pete Hegseth, then like make these people fire you for not committing illegal action, you know? I think there's something there. I mean, it's like much better to like disobey an order and be like, hey, that's illegal, I'm not doing it, and then force them to fire you. But I also get like, you know, it's very easy to say, harder to do when there's going to be a million reasons why that'd be way worse, right? Like if you are disobeying orders in theory, you can get in the military like lose benefits or get court-martialed or whatever the fuck. I don't fucking know how it works, but in theory, that's a factor to consider. So, I mean, I get it on that sense, you know. See what else? Anything else am I recommended about this? Why? Ought to be something else about Venezuela. This song called Destiny that came out 2 days ago. Is this something I recommended because it's Destiny? What the fuck is this? It's gonna be. What is this song gonna be? Is this a song called Destiny? Like, there's also fear of more egregious retaliation of disobeying. Yeah, I mean, there's another thing. If you're disobeying at that point, you can get actually imprisoned maybe. So there's yeah, it's scarier to force them to fire you. Anything else? True critic. Yeah, that's what Destiny sounds like, I guess. Hey, what's up, Aurelianus? How you doing? The music with the little anime girl thumbnail, either an absolute banger or the most horrendous dog shit I've ever heard. Yeah, pretty much. I don't know what the fuck this is. I can't tell if it's dog shit or fire yet. The beat drops, maybe it's gonna be fire, but so far it's not that great. I'll be real. Cannot tell what they're going for with this. It's half chill, but the main thing is very jarring. That's enough of that. Maybe we'll listen to the rest of it later, but Jesus. Yeah. Yo, what's up, Julio? It's building, now it's stalling. Yeah, it didn't really go anywhere, at least in the time that, I think this what, half of it? A little over half. It didn't go anywhere. I don't know, man. I don't know. This song proves conclusively that Destiny's a girl's name. True, Cryptic, you're actually right. Hold up. Let's get cook. Okay, hold on. Let me. Venezuela news. Let's see. It was about Trump, Venezuela.
More than
New York Post. I don't know about that one.
Venezuela, President Trump has said Maduro doesn't.
Oh, this fucking shit. Let's see. Apparently, Levitt was asked directly if they want a regime change. Let's see.
President Trump has said Maduro doesn't want to mess with the United States, and this administration is continuing to position more military assets towards Venezuela. I'm wondering if the end goal of this narco-terrorist war is to implement a regime change in Venezuela.
The president has spoken on that, Reagan, and I certainly won't get ahead of him. What we've made very clear is that this administration is not going to tolerate international narco-terrorist organizations from trafficking drugs into the United States. And these cartels over time have grown more armed, well-organized, and violent. They have financial means, sophistication, and capabilities needed to operate in the way this administration has. And they have illegally caused the
it's not really answering the question anymore,
tens of thousands of American citizens each year. So that's where we are right now with respect to Venezuela, but also any country that is sending purposefully illegal narco-terrorists to the United States of America to bring illegal drugs.
Any country. Very cool. Meanwhile, here's this tweet, apparently. Source semaphore, I'm not sure. It seemed pretty legit. Trump will coordinate with Congress, quote, when Maduro's corpse is in U.S. custody, administration source says. So, a source from the admin is saying that Trump is only going to start working with Congress when they've already killed Maduro, so this shit is pretty fucking crazy. So he's saying that he is gonna go to war to kill Maduro, but without congressional approval. You can't do that. You can't really do that. It's not really how it works, you know. Kind of need that part, you know, for legitimacy in your fucking shit, and obviously to not break the law and to not bring the American people into a war that they do not want to fight. But who cares, you know? DJ Toenail could have fixed that beat. Holy shit, true. He would have absolutely saved it. Karen Love is actual low IQ. She can't even answer a yes or no question. Yeah, it's her job not to answer yes or no questions. And I guess on that, job, she can fucking succeed because she can just dodge. Simple. Is America going to war, yes or no? Yeah, they can't answer. Well, that's the thing. They can't say yes. Because if they say yes, then they have to get congressional approval. You can't be in war if Congress doesn't declare war. Or unless somebody invades you, I guess. But, that's another thing. But, yeah, I mean, they can't answer that question. So they have to say no. Oh, we're just handling some drugs, and we're just dealing with some drugs, and that's it, But, yeah, it's actually so cooked. Kill your leader, then I'll work with you. Yep. Yeah, obviously. Who the fuck? Who cares? New York Times podcast, 30 minutes. Do I want to watch this? These CBS Mornings.
President Trump has cited efforts to keep illegal drugs out of the U.S. as justification for some major policy changes like a crackdown on immigration and new tariffs. But could that same framing also be used to shepherd in regime change in Venezuela? Over the past few months, the White House has used allegations of drug trafficking from Venezuela to justify deadly strikes on boats in international waters. Just last week, President Trump said he's considering escalating those attacks with potential strikes on land targets as well. He also revealed he has authorized covert CIA operations inside Venezuela, which that country's president, Nicolas Maduro, opposes. By the way, Trump has long accused the Maduro regime of supporting narco-terrorists and cartels. And joining us now to talk about all of this and where the U.S. goes next is CBS News Homeland Security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, good to see you. Venezuela is not a healthy country, right? It's a struggling country. The Nobel Peace Prize winner is basically begging the U.S. to overthrow the administration. Is this the way?
Aren't they considering USA to be invaded already with the Alien Enemies Act? Yeah, so the whole thing with the Alien Enemies Act, the reason that Trump declared that is because what they're supposedly saying is that the U.S. is being invaded, or we can just read the fucking part of it that matters. But it's we're being invaded by Venezuela. I don't know. That's why. Can we just read the fucking text? Does always have to be an explanation? Okay, let's see. Whenever there is a declared war between the U.S. and any foreign nation government, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the U.S. by any foreign nation or government, and the president makes public proclamation of it, all natives, citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government being 14 years or older within the United States and not naturalized shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. So what they're saying is that there have to be a declared war, which we're not, or invasion or predatory incursion. The argument is not that we're being invaded, but that there's a predatory incursion, right? But in theory, it's this part, right? Invasion or predatory incursion. So it's either or. And now it's saying any foreign nation or government. Now their argument is that the Trinidad is working with officially used as an arm of the Venezuelan government. Therefore, the Alien Enemies Act can be used to deport Venezuelan nationals from U.S. soil to other places, including El Salvador, into Secat, the fucking torture prison. So yeah, it's funny how they say here that these are that Trinidad is state actors, that they're officially an arm of the Venezuelan state, and yet for these strikes in the ocean, to be able to do these strikes, they're saying that these drug cartels are non-state terrorist organizations. So that's their justification for why they can shoot them down. It's just, who the fuck cares? They can just contradict themselves, and that's it. Who the fuck cares? No one cares. Jesus. Let's keep watching this, I guess.
Way the White House is going to do it?
Well, the U.S. government has a long history of covert action in Latin America, including regime change. Countries like Chile, Nicaragua, Cuba, and others. And successive U.S. administrations has called for Maduro to respect the results of elections in Venezuela, which have elected his opposition. President Trump is taking a different course. He's publicly acknowledging covert action, ostensibly to send a message to Maduro that there could be regime change efforts. There's a significant military buildup in the Caribbean, Tony. 10,000 troops many military vessels. And in
That's
addition
a
to that,
lot.
of course, there are these military strikes on boats to also send a message to Maduro that potentially land strikes are possible. Not to mention the fact there is a huge reward from the U.S. government
Yep, they
for
upped the
Maduro's arrest or
bounty
capture.
on Maduro.
Is there anything,
Just,
you know, to assume that the
'cause they
CIA
can.
was already in Venezuela operating? I mean, I've seen season 2 of Jack Ryan. You see about this on TV.
Oh,
but, you know,
it's just like in the
From my
TV
experience, without going
show.
into classified information, the U.S. government typically has CIA personnel in countries that are of national security interest. The CIA serves a range of functions. They collect intelligence to inform national security policy making. They also engage in a range of covert action operations, paramilitary operations, influence operations, and in many cases, including in Latin America, also regime change operations.
How have those operations gone in the past, generally speaking? Has the U.S. gotten the result it was looking for? And based on that answer, what are the risks here?
Regime change operations by the CIA have a very uneven, I'm being kind, history at best, Tony. It is true that the CIA has been successful in getting various leaders ousted. But in many cases, even when those operations are successful, what comes next is a really big problem. You get a leader out of power, sure, but
Yep, and then what? And then are we just like fucking like Afghanistaning it? Like we're just fucking stuck there until we figure out how to fucking like get the fuck out? Like what are we doing here? And then what? And then what?
Ensuring resources, ensuring security is a whole other game, and that's been uneven and spotty.
I think we've heard the temperature sort of rising about people wondering, is there going to be a potential war in Venezuela? I mean, I think we've seen the president maintain he's more of a peace president. I mean, how worried should people be that something like that might happen?
Anytime the U.S. military is conducting these sorts of strikes in international waters and perhaps even in sovereign waters, there's always the risk of escalation. We have a lot of rhetoric from the Maduro regime, from the Trump administration, that is certainly worrisome. At the same time, I don't think President Trump is looking to get into a land war with Venezuela. I think the real risk here is unintended consequences and miscalculation. We saw that, for example, with the attack on what is seemingly a fishing boat and the murder of an unarmed fisherman.
Is there anything to suggest that Maduro is uniquely vulnerable right now?
Maduro has certainly been under pressure for a long time, so he is likely more vulnerable than he's been in the past. Financial sanctions, influence operations, and more, but he has staying power. So I don't know that regime change is imminent, but it certainly looks like President Trump is using every tool in his toolkit to achieve that.
All right, Sam Vinograd, appreciate your expertise. That was today's By the Way.
Informative. Real life lore. Why the U.S. and Venezuela are on the brink of war. 40 minutes. Could be worth watching. Does sound kind of interesting, even though that was a month ago, but there's real life lore. Thoughts, guys? Do we watch the real life lore? More like a piece of shit president. Got him. Damn, Foch, you got his ass. Piece of shit president. We went to war with Venezuela. Imagine it's gonna be like guerrilla warfare type deal, which America historically does not do well against. Probably not. But like it would be. I would guess it's more just like straight naval. If it's like a land war, I don't know. I don't. Who the fuck knows at that point? What the fuck happens? Like, I don't even know what a land battle like accomplishes. Just fucking bomb it. I don't know. It's just weird shit. Like all this shit is like retarded, and I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know because they don't know what it looks like. They don't know what the fuck a war against Venezuela actually like looks like. What will happen? Who will like if they'll get reinforcements from somebody? If they will like who the fuck knows? It's all just so stupid and insane. Damn, I kind of really want to watch that real life lore video. Let's see.
Something unprecedented is taking place right now in the Caribbean Sea. The United States is currently deploying more military assets to this theater than at any other point in the 21st century. And it's the largest concentration of U.S. military might in the Western Hemisphere since the country's invasion of Panama in 1989.
This time, we could play a game now since we're just watching this. Curious.
However, the U.S. military is concentrating its forces just outside of the territorial waters of Venezuela, arguably the most antagonistic country in the Western Hemisphere to American interests. The U.S. has deployed 3 modern Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers and 1 Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, along with at least 1 nuclear-powered attack submarine just offshore of Venezuela.
Ticonderoga, like the pencil? Damn, what the heck?
Really carry a strike package of dozens to hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles. If these Navy warships weren't enough, they've also been joined by the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit as well, consisting of the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, along with its complement of 2 transport and logistical support ships. The USS Iwo Jima, in particular, is basically a miniature-sized aircraft carrier that was captured by photographs on its way to Venezuela, with multiple Harrier attack aircraft, M-22 Osprey assault helicopters, and Sikorsky heavy-lift helicopters all on board. It can also, along with its 2 transport and logistical support ships, launch multiple hovercraft and amphibious assault vehicles for armed beach assaults under its aerial coverage too. More than 2,500 U.S. Marines have been deployed here with the 22nd, along with around 2,000 sailors.
Power, like it's just fucking like just bomb the shit out of them. Like if that's actually what's happening, then it would just be that. I don't know what the fuck else. I don't know what you do in like land that war against these people. I don't know.
To the naval complement with the destroyers, the cruiser, and the submarine. And on top of all of this firepower, the U.S. has also deployed a literal combat ship to the theater as well, the USS Minneapolis-St. Paul, bringing the total number of vessels deployed to the theater so far up to 9, while at least an additional 10 F-35 fighter jets have also been deployed to airfields in Puerto Rico. The Trump administration's officially stated purpose for deploying all of these assets nearby to Venezuela right now is to simply conduct counter-narcotics operations and to halt the flow of drugs from Venezuela coming into the United States. But deploying warships and nuclear-powered submarines armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Harrier aircraft, F-35 fighters, and thousands of Marines ready for a beach assault appears to be wildly overkill for that kind of a mission alone against drug runners, who most often use nothing more advanced than motorized speedboats.
Seems like a little overkill.
Most drugs enter into the United States today through the Pacific coast anyway, while a great deal more come in through air shipments, none of which the flotilla being assembled off the coast of Venezuela will be capable of stopping.
What does Venezuela Navy even look like? I have no clue. I mean, I imagine they have a Navy, but I have no idea. I mean, it obviously doesn't stand a chance against the U.S., but like that's not even like the bigger issue. Like obviously the U.S. wins this kind of war. The issue is more so like, and then what? And also like if somebody will come to Venezuela's aid or like do other action, right? Because Venezuela does have allies in like Russia and Iran and like shit like that. So who the fuck knows?
Which has led to rampant speculation that their ulterior objective may be attempting to induce regime change within Venezuela instead, by overthrowing their president, Nicolas Maduro.
Really?
Merely weeks before the flotilla began being assembled, the US government doubled the bounty it had placed on Maduro's head from $25 million to an unprecedented $50 million. The biggest bounty that the US government has ever put on a single individual's head in history. To put how serious this $50 million bounty recently placed on Nicolas Maduro is in comparison, it's double the bounty that the US has put on other previous men on its most wanted lists, like Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and the former leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, all of whom topped out on the U.S. bounty list at just $25 million by comparison. The U.S. bounty on Nicolas Maduro to
Wait a minute, Osama?
Day is what it once had placed on both Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein together. And the U.S. doesn't recognize
him. I say we find him and split the pot, boys. I mean, yeah, I would fucking take that money if I had information leading to the arrest of him, you know? Like, fuck it.
As Venezuela's legitimate president either, and Maduro himself is far from the only man in Venezuela with a high U.S. bounty on his head. His appointed Minister of the Interior, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, now has a $25 million bounty placed on his head as well, equaling Osama bin Laden's bounty. His defense minister, General Vladimir Pedrino Lopez, has a $15 million bounty, while his Minister of Industry, Tariq Zaidan Aissami Maddah, has another $10 million bounty, collectively representing $100 million worth of bounties placed on just these 4 senior leaders of the Venezuelan government alone. In July, the month before all of these bounties were dramatically increased, U.S. President Donald Trump signed a secret directive that authorized the U.S. military to deploy force against Latin American cartels that were designated by his government as terrorist organizations, which includes Venezuela's most infamous criminal organization, Tren de Aragua. This secret directive has once again raised the specter of a 21st century interpretation of America's Monroe Doctrine, its historical justification for militarily intervening in the affairs of other states in the Americas. The Trump administration accuses Maduro and his close inner circle of secretly running their own drug cartel called the Cartel of the Suns, which the Trump administration further accuses of providing material support to both Tren de Aragua and the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, their cocaine and fentanyl running operations into the United States. Thus, the Trump administration has led the U.S. into designating the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization as well, which is the justification that the U.S. government has used to label Maduro and his inner circle as narco-terrorists and to place massive bounties on their heads with. And in
Abu Omar Baghdadi, yep, that's him.
might also become the casus belli that they use to initiate attacks on the Maduro government from the flotilla that's being assembled off of their shores. It should also be noted that there are many controversies surrounding the Cartel of the Suns, including as to whether or not it even exists. Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic have all joined the United States.
Crazy. Holy fuck. Jesus, man. It's that bad, huh?
And declare the Cartel of the Suns to be a terrorist organization. Maduro himself denies that any such organization exists, while Colombia's leftist president, Gustavo Petro, has also publicly rejected the cartel's existence and has insisted that it's nothing more than a propaganda tool being used to justify toppling Venezuela's government. Several internal reports in the US also seem to contradict many of the Trump administration's claims here. In May, a National Intelligence Council report that was declassified concluded that the Maduro government likely didn't have any policy of cooperating with Tren de Aragua, nor did it direct any of Tren de Aragua's operations in the United States. Similarly, the Mexican government has also said that they've never found any link between Maduro's government in Venezuela and the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico.
Also, I will say they also very much could be like involved with the government as well. But I mean, yeah, if they can't prove it, then...
Nonetheless, the justifications and casus belli have been drafted and the firepower put into place. All that's required now is to simply pull the trigger. And on the 2nd of September, the first shots were fired. A boat carrying 11 Venezuelans in international waters that had departed from Venezuela was shot by a missile likely fired by an American MQ-9 Reaper drone, killing everyone on board. The US government claimed afterwards that the boat was carrying a large amount of drugs and that everyone on board were members of Tren de Aragua, potentially representing the first instance of a lethal US drone strike conducted against a Latin American cartel since Trump returned back to the presidency.
I believe
this operation sharply contrasts with the traditional procedures the US has used against drug-running vessels in the past, which are typically intercepted by the Coast Guard and raided so that their contents can be verified and their crews apprehended.
Yeah, typically you would if let's say you have intelligence that a ship is carrying drugs, you would confirm it by boarding the ship and interdicting it and arresting the people on board and getting the drugs and confiscating it, then charging these people with crimes and putting them in prison. You wouldn't just shoot the whole ship. It's not really normal.
Up a suspected drug-running vessel with a drone strike isn't something that's happened until now, and it's only added on to the escalation going on around Venezuela, since the Trump administration accuses Maduro's government of directly maintaining links to Tren de Aragua. Adding even more fuel to the fire, CNN has also begun reporting that according to multiple inside sources, the Trump administration is presently considering initiating military strikes against cartel targets within Venezuela itself, which could ostensibly mean strikes against Tren de Aragua or against the Venezuelan government itself, which the Trump administration claims is essentially indistinguishable from a cartel. Maduro himself seems to believe that the U.S. flotilla gathering
all their drugs to make sure they're real, all the proper precautions. Exactly, Fudge, you're getting it. You just sniff them, make sure they're real. Might have to taste it. Might have to give them a try to make sure. But besides that, just all the regular stuff.
Off of his shores are indeed preparing to attack him and to remove him from power. He has been freaking out on social media and in speeches about the prospect, has ordered a full mobilization of his military, has called for millions of additional Venezuelan citizens to join the country's armed militias to resist any attack, has deployed at least 15,000 of his troops to the border with Colombia, and has sworn to resist and fight the US to the bitter end in the event of an actual attack. On the 5th of September, a pair of Venezuelan F-16 fighters flew close to the American warships in a show of resolve, and the US warned that they could be shot down the next time if they were deemed to be a threat. It's really not an exaggeration at all to say that the United States and Venezuela have never been closer to the brink of war than they currently are now. So what exactly is going on here? How did the US and Venezuela get to this point? What are the risks of actual conflict both now and in the future? And will we end up getting the world we played in during Mercenaries 2 back in the late 2000s? It's been building up towards this for quite some time, because the US and Venezuela have maintained a very adversarial relationship for pretty much my own entire lifetime. To give some historical recap, Venezuela should realistically be a global energy superpower because it controls the largest proven reserve.
Holy fuck. Yeah, it should be. It really should be, huh? But
of oil on the planet, more than even Saudi Arabia. The oil in Venezuela used to provide the country with fabulous riches, and as recently as the 1970s, Venezuela had the highest GDP per capita in Latin America because of it. But Venezuela's crude oil is heavy, sour.
Venezuela was goated, yo. You'll just never understand it unless you get it. It's just... They were, him. They were Himothy, bro. They were that fucking country. It was crazy. They were just goated, and then here we are.
power and full of impurities like sulfur, which means that it's pretty difficult to refine. Venezuela was able to gain the technical assistance it needed with drilling and refining by attracting major foreign oil companies like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, and Shell to the country through joint ventures with Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA. Oil profits were split 60-40 between government-owned PDVSA and the foreign energy companies. PDVSA gained valuable foreign experience, and the economic relationship with the United States blossomed. And due to the geographic proximity of the U.S. to Venezuela, American energy companies built up a dense network of heavy-duty oil refineries across the Gulf Coast in Texas and Louisiana that could handle refining Venezuela's nearby extra-heavy crude, which increased the U.S.-Venezuela relationship even further. By the late 1990s, an overwhelming 60 to 70% of Venezuela's oil exports were all heading to the United States, while Venezuelan oil made up about 15% of all U.S. oil imports, the single largest source from any country in the world at the time. But the huge amount of money that was gushing into Venezuela through the oil industry gave way to runaway corruption, mismanagement, and overdependence. Between 1972 and 1997, it's been estimated that as much as $100 billion was simply embezzled in the country by hopelessly corrupt government officials. Meanwhile, oil came to make up a whopping 90% of Venezuela's total exports, as much as 70% of the government's operating budget, and up to 40% of the country's entire GDP, crowding out the development of virtually all other industries in the country. In the 1980s, the price of oil crashed from about $40 a barrel in 1979 to just $10 to $12 a barrel by 1986, which severely hurt the undiversified Venezuelan economy. Inflation and debt in the country both began to soar to unsustainable levels, and in 1989, the government agreed to the terms of a financial bailout from the IMF that included steep fiscal austerity measures like decreased subsidies, public sector layoffs, a currency devaluation, and increased taxes and interest rates. Enraged by the fact that the corrupt government had embezzled billions of dollars through the state-owned oil industry and then left its own people to suffer the consequences through these austerity measures, the result sparked a wave of deadly riots across the country and a sharp increase in anti-government sentiment. Riding on this wave of revolt, a revolutionary named Hugo Chavez attempted to launch a failed coup attempt against the government in 1992, briefly found himself in prison, and then eventually emerged victorious in the country's 1998 presidential election, after running on an explicitly socialist political platform, with promises that he would redistribute the nation's oil wealth in order to help reduce poverty and inequality. And so began the socialist experiment in Venezuela that has lasted for decades ever since. Chavez's policies, at least initially, actually were quite successful at reducing the country's poverty rate, but they also set in motion the chain of events that would eventually lead to Venezuela's almost complete and catastrophic collapse. Oil production in Venezuela peaked under his watch in the early 2000s, but after workers at the state-owned oil company PDVSA began striking in 2002, he simply fired thousands of the company's most experienced workers in the industry rather than giving in to their demands. Which
you telling me the workers in their socialism will still be upset? No, say it ain't so.
Eliminated a huge amount of the country's technical expertise and know-how. He also took steps to almost completely nationalize the entire oil industry in the country through seizures of assets that were owned by the foreign oil companies like Exxon, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips, which began greatly straining Venezuela's relationship with the United States and led to dramatically reduced foreign investment in the country, which hurt Venezuela's ability to keep their own refineries and operations running in the long term.
Suddenly, when you fuck up your relationships and you lose all your fucking, like, top fucking mines, you know, it kind of fucks up your fucking production.
At almost the same time, he also began providing heavily subsidized Venezuelan oil to friendly, largely fellow leftist states in the region as well, like Cuba and Nicaragua, which further drained the country's remaining strategic reserves. Within just 15 years after being elected by 2013, Chavez oversaw the country's national debt more than double while watching their strategic reserves of oil dwindle and dwindle. It was an unsustainable system.
What kind of a president would just oversee the national debt going up and up and up?
But it was also a popular one that enabled Chavez to steadily expand the powers of his office to near dictatorial levels. He eliminated presidential term limits, and he had multiple independent media outlets harassed or even shut down. When he died in office in 2013, Chavez's right-hand man and vice president, Nicolas Maduro, took over the presidency after him, and he took the opportunity to rapidly coalesce his position into a full-blown dictatorship. In 2014, just the year after he took things over, the global price of oil collapsed again from more than $100 a barrel to less than $30 a barrel by early 2016, which threw the Venezuelan economy that was still cripplingly overdependent on oil into a tailspin. Chavez's generous social welfare policies and subsidies that made him hugely popular with the people only worked so long as the price of oil remained high and Venezuela made lots of money.
The second it's
Once
not,
the oil price collapsed under Maduro,
everything's gonna go to shit.
The nation could no longer afford its lavish Chavez-era expenditures. Protests and riots erupted across the country as services and jobs were dramatically cut and inflation skyrocketed, to which Maduro responded to with violence and crackdowns that immediately diminished his popularity. In 2015, the Obama administration declared Venezuela a national security threat, and and authorized targeted sanctions against Maduro and other government officials. But the true avalanche of sanctions and the shattering of U.S.-Venezuela relations would come later during the first Trump administration. As the political and economic crisis in Venezuela deepened and Maduro grew increasingly more autocratic, the first Trump administration steadily came to embrace a policy of maximum pressure against Maduro in an attempt to force his removal from office through economic means, especially after the controversy of the 2018 election in the country. That year, Maduro claimed to have won re-election to a second 6-year term as president in an election that was widely marred by irregularities, the banning of major opposition candidates from running.
What kind of a president would try to rig an election?
Rock-bottom turnout and accusations of fraud. All of Maduro's political opponents who ran against him refused to recognize the 2018 elections results, as did the US, Australia, the Organization of American States, and the EU. At the same time, many of Maduro's international allies chose to support him and recognize the results, including Cuba, Nicaragua, Russia, Belarus, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Turkey, setting the stage for Venezuela becoming a flashpoint in the new 21st century Cold War. The first Trump administration refused to recognize the election and first declared Maduro to be an illegitimate usurper when his second term began in January of 2019. The U.S. recognized Juan Guaido, the head of the country's opposition-controlled National Assembly, as the interim president of Venezuela instead.
Had him as a guest at one of the State of the Unions, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly.
Severed its remaining diplomatic relations with Venezuela and expelled the country's diplomats from Washington. Long-standing relations that had lasted for decades and had been strained for years were finally shattered to the point of open hostility. And on top of all of that, Trump led the U.S. into unleashing an avalanche of new sanctions on Venezuela too that were designed to try and encourage Maduro's removal. Venezuela's remaining access to the U.S. financial system was eliminated, which made it much more difficult for the country to borrow money and refinance debt. Other sanctions were designed to target and strangle the Venezuelan oil industry. U.S. companies were completely prohibited from purchasing Venezuelan oil, while further sanctions targeted companies that were involved in transporting Venezuelan oil to third-party countries as well. This eliminated Venezuela's ability to access the heavy-duty oil refineries around the U.S. Gulf Coast that they had used for decades to refine their oil at, while further sanctions blocked spare parts and chemicals from entering into Venezuela to prevent them from adequately maintaining their own refineries as well. Coupled with their own self-induced brain drain of experienced oil workers fired during the Chavez years and decades of mismanagement, underinvestment, and corruption, the sanctions helped cause Venezuela's oil production to completely collapse, and with it, so too did Venezuela's economy. After 2015, Venezuelan oil production began falling off a cliff as the sanctions began to bite, to the point where today, Venezuela is producing less oil than it was back during World War II, despite having the largest reserves in the world. Between 2014
and they have so much of it, they can't actually do anything with it because they simply don't have the infrastructure to be able to do it. So that would be one bonus, I guess. If this were in theory a successful invasion, they could take a like benefit from a lot of the actual oil reserves that are there, which are some of the biggest in the world. But you know.
and 2021 under Maduro's government, the Venezuelan economy collapsed by an almost unbelievable 3/4. One of the most catastrophic economic collapses that has ever been witnessed in modern history. Hyperinflation set in and grew to as high as 130,000% by 2018, making the Venezuelan currency almost worthless in the process. And while inflation has slowed down since then, it was still sitting at 190% as recently as 2023. All of these issues collectively plunged Venezuela into what has probably been the country's greatest civilizational crisis in its entire history. Basic goods and services, including food, water, and gasoline, all became preciously scarce, and by late 2022, more than half of Venezuela's population were reduced to living in poverty. By far the highest percentage seen on the South.
Yeah, Venezuela got hit by that sonic inflation. Don't Google that, guys, but that's what they got hit by.
South American continent. And all of this was explicitly designed to destroy Maduro's popularity and undermine his legitimacy within Venezuela, and hopefully lead to his removal from within. But ironically, the sanctions that Trump dumped on Venezuela during his first term contributed directly to the country's unprecedented migration crisis later during the Biden administration that he would use as an issue to help get himself reelected in 2024. Since 2014, close to 8 million Venezuelan refugees are believed to have fled the country all around the world, with many of them heading north towards the U.S. southern border. By 2021, shortly after Trump had left office, Venezuelans became the second most common nationality arriving at the southern border, remaining only behind Mexicans. And by 2023, the numbers of undocumented Venezuelan migrants residing in the United States had increased by nearly tenfold from 2019, around when the heavy sanctions were first imposed, from only around 64,000 then to around 650,000 by 2023. Even worse for the first Trump administration, the sanctions
I already have. Such a good fucking clip. It's a classic.
Didn't even accomplish their biggest goal, removing Maduro from power. He persisted clinging on to power and crushed any protests that arose against him, resulting in the deaths of dozens to hundreds of protesters since the contested 2018 election, depending on the source. And Maduro's isolation from the US and the Western world led to an increasing Venezuela's ties with Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran instead, all of which helped to buttress his position in power in various ways. Cuba's intelligence services began providing their assistance to him. Russia and Iran both began providing Venezuela with arms to replace the loss in American weapons, while China began buying up most of what remained remained of Venezuela's dwindling oil exports, all of which essentially made Venezuela second larger Cuba in the Western Hemisphere from a geopolitical perspective. And on top of the sanctions, Trump also put the first bounty on Maduro during his first term as well. In 2018, the Trump administration slapped a $15 million bounty on Maduro's head, based on accusations that he was personally directing the operations of the Cartel of the Suns, along with other high-ranking Venezuelan military and political officials. Allegedly, the U.S. government accused the Cartel of the Suns of utilizing the state apparatus of Venezuela to run a vast cocaine trafficking project into the United States, Europe, and elsewhere as an alternative source of government revenue in the face of the U.S.-imposed sanctions. They further accused Maduro and the Cartel of the Suns of collaborating with the FARC in Colombia to smuggle cocaine into the United States, an armed Marxist guerrilla rebel force and U.S.-designated terrorist organization with its own cocaine smuggling operation. Thus, the U.S. labeled Maduro as a narco-terrorist and charged him with drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy, regarding him as both an illegitimate usurper and a wanted fugitive, rather than a sitting president. And then, in between the Trump presidencies, Maduro continued doing things that kept pissing off the U.S. government even further. Initially, the new Biden administration attempted to ease Trump's maximum pressure policy towards Venezuela and reopen engagement. After Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022, Biden agreed to allow Chevron to restart a few of its operations in Venezuela again in order to help put more oil onto the market and reduce prices in order to hurt Russia. Biden also eased some of Trump's sanctions on Venezuela in exchange for political promises. In late 2023, Biden granted the Venezuelans the ability to begin exporting their oil and gas again for a period of 6 months in exchange for Maduro's promise to hold a free and fair presidential election the following year in 2024, which the Biden administration hoped would succeed at removing him from power, where the maximum pressure strategy had failed. But almost immediately after agreeing to host this free and fair election, Maduro decided to hold a referendum within the country on whether or not Venezuela should claim roughly 70% of neighboring Guyana's territory, part of a long-standing territorial dispute that dates back to the colonial era. This whole situation briefly captured the world's attention at the end of 2023 as fears mounted that Maduro was laying the groundwork for a full-on invasion of Guyana to claim the disputed area. If he did so and was successful, he would also seize control over nearly all of Guyana's maritime area and all of its recently discovered rich offshore oil reserves that are mostly operated by ExxonMobil. Guyana is believed to have 11 billion barrels of oil worth of reserves offshore, nearly equivalent to the reserves of OPEC member Algeria. And because Guyana hasn't been brutally sanctioned by the US like Venezuela and generally cooperates with Washington, Guyana now produces about as much oil as Venezuela does, despite having vastly fewer reserves overall. As a result, Guyana has become a major component of the global oil and energy map, and most of its oil exports currently travel to the US and Europe, helping to keep Western nations' supplies up, keeping oil prices down with more supply, and hurting Russia, and generally benefiting Washington's overall geopolitical calculus. A Venezuelan invasion and seizure of Guyana's territory and oil fields would never be tolerated by the US. But Maduro held the referendum for internal political purposes as well. His government accused the opposition leaders in the country of attempting to sabotage the referendum and issued arrest warrants for more than a dozen of them on treason and conspiracy charges, helping to eliminate many of his most capable opponents from being able to run in the 2024 election at all. And so, frustrated, the Biden administration reimposed several US sanctions on Venezuela again in April of 2024, just ahead of the July presidential election in the country, which itself became marred by controversy just like the previous 2018 election had been. Both Maduro and his primary political opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, claimed victory in the election, but Maduro curiously chose not to release any vote tallies or tabulated results that would actually prove his victory claim, and instead he insisted that he narrowly
Maduro was so retarded for that, returning Guyana randomly. Venezuela wanted even more oil than it is incapable of extracting. Well, it's not even like that. That wasn't even for oil either. It's just like a fucking historical thing for like with like French Guyana and shit. It's like all fucking random memes. But that was just distraction to like. I mean, kind of same shit Trump's doing now. It's just distraction because shit's going wrong. So you're just like, oh guys, look, we're gonna go to war and we're gonna retake the Guyana, which rightfully belongs to us. It's like Russia, Ukraine shit kind of in a way, but even stupider.
Won the election with just over 51% of the total. Gonzalez and the opposition, meanwhile, claimed that they had actually won by a landslide, and they backed it up by pretty strong evidence, like official tally sheets that were collected by poll watchers from a majority of the polling centers that showed overwhelming support for Gonzalez. The US, along with almost all of the rest of the Western Hemisphere, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, all refused to recognize the results of the election and chose to recognize Gonzalez as the winner and the legitimate Venezuelan president instead, while Russia, Belarus, Iran, China, Cuba, and others chose to support Maduro's claim and continued recognizing him as the country's president instead. Anti-Maduro protests erupted across Venezuela in the wake of the results, which Maduro used the army to crush in a massive crackdown that resulted in more than 2,000 arrests and more than 24 deaths. Maduro's government later issued an arrest warrant for Gonzalez himself, who fled the country in exile for Spain, where he still remains today, a year later, with the continued backing and support of the EU and US to the Venezuelan presidency. Maduro had unequivocally become a full-blown dictator in Venezuela who openly stole elections without any care of the consequences. Venezuela's score on the Corruption's Perceptions Index correspondingly plummeted, falling by more than 40 places since 2005 to the point where it's today ranked as the third most deeply corrupt country on the earth, worse off than even countries like Syria, Eritrea, and North Korea. Trump's policy of economic warfare and sanctions during his first term had failed to bring about change in the country.
So another oil war where nobody needs more oil. Scriptwriters getting lazy, keep using the same plot. Yeah, pretty much. It really is. Like, it's just the history of humanity, I guess, you know? People just go to war for fucking ego and fucking, like, glory or whatever the fuck. Like, it really is kind of that way sometimes.
It even backfired in the sense that it contributed to the migration crisis at the US southern border, while Biden's policy of engagement and diplomacy failed to bring about any change as well. Maduro still remained throughout it all, and if anything, was growing even more authoritarian and dictatorial, while American influence in the country was steadily being replaced by Russian, Chinese, and Iranian influence instead, giving many of America's greatest geopolitical enemies a foothold in the Western Hemisphere. In the final days of the Biden administration in January of 2025, he had the bounty on Maduro's head increased from $15 million up to $25 million to increase the pressure further. And then came the second Trump administration and another shift in tactics. Initially, Trump tried to return back to the economic warfare policies of his first term by canceling Chevron's licenses to do any business in the country. That decision was championed by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who is long...
Yeah, apparently a lot of it's Rubio that's fucking influencing this shit.
Been an outspoken hawk on Venezuela within Washington politics, but it was also condemned by other parties within Trump's own MAGA movement, like by big oil interests and by personalities like Laura Loomer, who argued that the move surrendered Venezuela's strategic oil fields to China. By July, Trump relented to the pressure growing within
actual ghoul demon human being? Yeah, her.
His own party and allow Chevron to continue their operations in Venezuela, while he attempted to negotiate with Maduro on his deportation policies involving the hundreds of thousands of undocumented Venezuelans residing within the United States. Trump sent his special envoy, Richard Grenell, directly to Venezuela to meet with Maduro in person.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. They were trying to get negotiations.
That in exchange for a reduction in some sanctions, Venezuela would release some American hostages and they would begin accepting deportation flights of their citizens from the United States. Through the month of July alone, the US government sent 9 deportation flights to Venezuela, a sign of how close Washington and Caracas were cooperating together fairly recently. However, Trump was also aware of 3 things. His own policy of sanctions and isolation to try and remove Maduro from power during his first term had failed. Biden's policy of diplomacy and engagement had failed to remove Maduro from power as well. And further diplomacy and engagement on his part was deeply unpopular with large...
These fucking Oilers, mate, they keep going all in, throwing true, literally.
Segments of his own voter base, especially among the Cuban exiles.
Like, can the Oilers be, like, in my chat instead? Like, why do they have to be over here doing this shit, you know? Like, we need some more Oilers in here.
Exile community in South Florida, and his own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Trump has likely calculated that another tactic to remove Maduro from power or to force him into compliance was needed without escalating all the way to full-blown war, and thus why he has likely decided to resort to a bout of gunboat diplomacy now. With a secret directive authorizing the U.S. military to attack cartels that he's designated as terrorist organizations, his doubling of the bounty on Maduro's head to $50 million, and his surrounding Venezuela's territorial waters with warships and submarines, not to even mention the blowing up of the alleged Tren de Aragua boat out in international waters, Trump is attempting to apply even more pressure on Maduro than anyone else has ever done before. Getting rid of Maduro in the country and replacing him with a more friendly regime would do several things for U.S. interests. First, if it is to be believed that the cartel of the Suns actually exists and Maduro is indeed using the powers of the Venezuelan state to align with Tren de Aragua and other cartels to smuggle cocaine and fentanyl into the United States, toppling him from power would curb a significant source of drugs entering into the country. Secondly, removing Maduro from power and replacing him with someone more friendly to Western interests would remove the Venezuelan territorial threat to Guyana and all of its oil fields, while it would also help to restart Western oil companies' activities within Venezuela itself, which after a few years' time of fixing could help get massive amounts of Venezuelan oil back onto the world market again after decades of absence and neglect, which would further reduce global oil prices and help ease inflation and hurt Russia's economy and its war-fighting ability in Ukraine and elsewhere. Finally, removing Maduro from power would remove a growing base of operations for major U.S. adversaries in the Western Hemisphere. Russia has announced plans to begin constructing a major ammunition factory in Venezuela and has sold billions of dollars worth of arms to the country, and has been rumored to be considering installing Oreshnik hypersonic nuclear-capable missiles on Venezuelan territory as well, though that so far has been unsubstantiated. Meanwhile, there's also been a significant amount of military cooperation going on between Venezuela and Iran as well, built upon their mutual opposition towards the U.S. Venezuela has allegedly enabled itself to be used as a point point of entry for Hezbollah into the greater Latin America region.
Hezbollah?
The two are known to have collaborated on
I didn't even know that one. Jesus Christ. Is this song getting involved? Like, what the hell?
Technology for years now. Just last year in 2024, Venezuela unveiled a new kamikaze drone that they call the Zamora V1, which is based on the same well-known Shahed 136 drone that has been used extensively by the Russian army in Ukraine. So far, the Zamora V1 is much more primitive than the Shahed 136 is, with a much shorter range and a much smaller explosive payload. But if the Venezuelans ever manage to get it up to par, with further help from the Iranians, they could conceivably eventually use the drones in swarms to attack strategic targets as far away as Florida and the Panama Canal, which is probably a capability that the United States would not like an adversary like Venezuela to possess. With all that being said, however, the number of military assets that Trump has so far deployed around Venezuela are not enough for a full-blown invasion into the country. But that's probably not what Trump is actually wanting to do anyway. It is still the largest overseas deployment of U.S. military assets in the Western Hemisphere since the 1989 invasion of Panama. But Venezuela in 2025 is not the same thing as Panama in 1989. Back then, the U.S. had similarly indicted Panama's dictator, Manuel Noriega, on federal drug trafficking charges and decided to invade the country in order to remove and arrest him. But that operation involved nearly 30,000 U.S. troops, many of whom were already stationed directly in Panama near the Panama Canal Zone back when it still existed. And Panama was a much smaller country with a much smaller population than Venezuela has today. Only 4,500 U.S. troops have so far been positioned around Venezuela aboard their ships. Far too few to actually invade the country, remove Maduro from power, and occupy it. But that isn't to say that they can't still help remove Maduro from power anyway. Trump is likely betting that following the hotly disputed 2024 election and protests in the country, that Maduro is presently deeply unpopular with his own people. The $50 million bounty on his head and the tens of millions of dollars on his cronies' heads, along with the presence of all the U.S. warships gathered just offshore, might just tempt someone to launch a rebellion with the expectation that the U.S. warships and air power will give assistance to them, giving the U.S. the ground forces that it needs without having to commit any of their own. Similar to how NATO air power helped Libyan rebels on the ground topple Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2011.
Like, yeah,
a similar
cool
series of events were to transpire in Venezuela.
Like, that's the thing with like all of this. Like, it would be cool if it worked and like Trump actually did like depose Maduro and got regime change and somehow it worked out perfectly, but it's still like, this is still illegal, you can't just do this, like, it's still bad, you know. That's kind of the thing with all this. So yeah, so it is.
The U.S. also already has the man in waiting that they would want to replace Maduro with, Edmundo Gonzalez, still in exile in Spain, who Washington still recognizes as Venezuela's legitimate president. The Tomahawk missiles on board the destroyers, cruiser, and submarine, along with the F-35s known to be deployed to Puerto Rico, enables the United States to decide on surgical aerial strikes against Maduro's most critical assets and infrastructure. They could choose to attack narcotic sites or even elements of the state like military and command sites, or even Venezuela's remaining operational oil production and refinery sites. They could even resort to attempted decapitation strikes, targeting Maduro himself and/or his senior generals and officers. The Marine Expeditionary Unit, while not large enough to assault the beaches and march all the way to Caracas and arrest Maduro alone, could also be utilized in a more limited raid under extensive aerial cover to attempt an arrest and extraction of Maduro under certain circumstances, like in the event of a major rebellion and its associated chaos in the country. Doing something like this would be far from unprecedented for Trump, and would in fact represent his preferred way of deploying U.S. military power. During his first administration, he ordered Tomahawk missile strikes against the Assad regime in Syria in 2017. He ordered a special forces raid in Syria in 2019 that killed the leader of ISIS. And it's recently come to light that he also authorized a failed Navy SEAL raid into North Korea that resulted in 3.
You are Minthara with balls? No. Minthara wishes she was Drist without balls, okay? Minthara wishes she was as cool as Drist Jordan, okay? Don't get it twisted, Mythal and titties. Kick Upton, are we a dictatorship yet? Where's my state-mandated girlfriend? I mean, I don't think, are you white? Maybe you got a state-mandated girlfriend in that case, but, yeah, I don't know. Not looking good for us.
He killed North Korean civilians. In 2020, he authorized a drone strike in Iraq that assassinated Iran's most senior military commander. And already in 2025, he's launched a sea and air campaign against the Houthis in Yemen and ordered a B-2 bomber raid on Iran that blew up Iran's most critical nuclear research sites. Trump doesn't like getting involved in big land wars, but he does like employing surgical airstrikes and raids. And the forces he has gathered just outside of Venezuela could fit this pattern of his, with limited strikes against the Maduro regime itself or against Tren de Aragua and other cartel targets. To give you an idea of the current capabilities of the the Venezuelan military, consider the fate of the Venezuelan Navy's patrol boat, Neguada, in 2020. While operating in international waters, the Neguada attempted to intercept a cruise ship called the RCGS Resolute. The Venezuelans fired warning shots and ordered the Resolute to follow them to a port in Venezuela, before they then collided their ship with the Resolute and sank themselves without anybody on the Resolute ever doing anything at all. Maduro himself then denounced the captain of the Resolute as a pirate and a terrorist, while the Venezuelan defense minister described what happened as an act of imperial aggression on the part of the Resolute, a cruise ship. Venezuela has some fighter jets, tanks, warships, and submarines, and their Iranian-assisted drones. But the sanctions that have been levied upon them for years have prevented them from acquiring spare parts and performing routine maintenance on a lot of them. And while Venezuela is known to have the Russian-produced S-300 anti-air system that dates back from the 2000s, it's likely that America's more modern F-35 fighters that are currently in Puerto Rico could evade their detection, while the S-300s would also struggle against the Tomahawk cruise missiles as well. If Trump gives the order for the flotilla to begin launching aerial attacks at targets within Venezuela itself, rather than just limiting them to drug runners out in international waters, there's likely little that Maduro could realistically do to actually stop them. Whether that results in a rebellion or Maduro's removal from power, however, is a different thing entirely. There were great hopes within Israel and the United States that the aerial bombing campaign launched against Iran earlier this year
Israel, so true.
Would have led to a rebellion that would topple the Iranian regime as well. But that never ended up materializing, and if anything, foreign bombs falling on Iranian soil only solidified the regime's authority with its people. There is no guarantee that attacks on Venezuela would do anything different. And then even if it does end up working out as intended and Maduro does end up getting removed, there's no guarantee of what the ensuing chaos in Venezuela could produce. Toppling Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam in Iraq both led to decades of chaos in those countries. And armed non-state actors in Colombia like the ELN, who have extensive influence in Venezuela, could capitalize on the chaos produced in unpredictable and potentially undesirable ways.
Like, that's just because they managed to invade, like, that doesn't mean it'll go well. Can be still pretty shit.
Venezuela could end up developing into a situation like in neighboring Colombia, which has been experiencing a constant low-level conflict between various non-state militias and armed groups for the past half-century now. Interestingly, just before I released this video, the Venezuelan government began accusing the US of conducting intelligence flights over the Caribbean region against them. Venezuela's defense minister, who has that active $15 million bounty on his head issued by the US government, stated that American intelligence and reconnaissance operations, including spy flights against Venezuela, had tripled across the month of August. This led to the defense minister claiming that the US was seeking a justification for an armed intervention in Venezuela to remove Maduro from power. And since then, one of the US Navy warships reportedly raided a Venezuelan fishing boat within Venezuela's own waters. The first apparent search and seizure operation by the Navy force that's gathered in the region. I've been a long-time user of Ground News, and I've partnered with it since 2022 because it's a product I trust to give me the information I need to better understand how a story is being framed and the context behind it. Ground News is an app and website on a mission to give us the transparency we're looking for in the news.
The stories.
It pulls in thousands of articles every day from all around the world into one place to show us how the different outlets cover the same story. So for each story, you get a visual breakdown of each outlet's bias, its reliability, and who owns the source. Let me show you how it works. On Ground News, you can see that over 250 news outlets are covering this story with the majority leaning left and center. And if I scroll down, I can see every outlet that's reported on the story. Venezuela and left-leaning sources have called the seizure of the fishing boat illegal and have described it as a hostile raid that violated Venezuela's national sovereignty. While the US government and right-leaning sources have stressed it as a necessary action of US anti-drug enforcement and a justified seizure within a law and order context.
Makes sense.
This story was also a blind spot for people who read right-leaning sources. Ground News has an entire feature they call the blind spot feed to make sure you don't miss out on any stories that are being disproportionately reported by either side of the political spectrum, like this one we just saw. I use Ground News daily and as a critical research tool for my videos. I find it crucial in today's increasingly polarized media environment, and as viewers of my channel, I think you'd find it extremely valuable too, which is why I've partnered with Ground News to get you 40% off of their unlimited access Vantage plan if you subscribe through the link down below in my description at ground.news/real-life-lore or by scanning the QR code that's here on your screen as well. It's the same plan that I use. Ground News and I share the same mission, and by checking them out, you'll also be supporting my channel as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching.
Real Life Lore's channel. Wow, that's great. Yep, what a fucking shit show. Pretty well. Alright, what else we got? The Supreme Court could flip the 2026 midterms upside down. It's gonna be about the Voting Rights Act, I assume. Maybe watch that. How will the Golden Dome work? I don't know if I want to watch that. Is Trump really up to in Latin America? Killing people. What else we got? Anybody else got something they want to watch? I think we watched some. Got some pretty good info on the Venezuela shit. It is also 1 a.m. I'll probably watch a couple more things, but yeah, I like started streaming, like immediately was like, damn, I'm kind of tired. Well, what else we got? Oh boy, I keep yawning. My bad. So Turkey Tom did a video about the Charlie Kirk killer. It seems really fucking cringe. I'll not be watching that. Be real with you. Let's watch the video about the Supreme Court. I'm curious what this guy's got to say about it.
Quick little announcement before we get into today's video. I've started a Stickman Talks Substack and newsletter.
Oh,
the current
Substack.
Working title of the newsletter is Stories I Want to Talk About But Can't, and as the title suggests, it'll contain
Turkey Tom a trans believer or Mormon believer? It was a lot about the trans shit. From what I saw. Supposedly some person close to them, like the shooter and like the trans roommate, was like showing a bunch of like DMs and shit, but I don't know how much I care or believe it, or if any of it, like if it's true, it would have been, the admin would have been posting that shit, so I don't know.
I would love to cover on my YouTube channel, but don't have time to. The first edition of this newsletter is currently live over on my Substack now, free for all to read. Payment is completely optional. My current hope is to do one of these weekly and break down like 5 or so news stories that I believe need more attention. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to check it out at the link down below in the description. I'll also likely have other written content coming on there from time to time, and maybe even a Patreon coming soon, though I'm still working out the details of all of that, so stay tuned. Anyways, with that small announcement out of the way, let's get into today's video. Let's talk about Calais versus Louisiana and its impact on the 2026 midterms. Wow, a double pop. I think that's history for this channel. I don't think I've ever used that sound effect twice in a video before. Welcome back to Stickman Talks, everyone. As of the time of me uploading this video, it's late October 2025, which means we are officially just over 1 year away from the 2026 US midterm elections. I'll be honest, this video was originally going to be a way too early preview of the 2026 midterms, but nothing is normal anymore and a lot has changed since I started planning it out. Instead, today, I'm going to be taking the time to discuss a current Supreme Court case by the name of Calais versus Louisiana and how it could change the 2026 midterms, as well as potentially change the way elections are held in this country for good. If you haven't been following the news recently, you may have missed a few headlines that the Supreme Court, or at least the conservative majority on it, appears sympathetic to further weakening the Voting Rights Act of 1965. More specifically, as Politico describes it, quote, several conservative justices signaled outright hostility toward the long-standing interpretation of Section 2 of the 1965 law, which broadly prohibits discrimination in voting practices on the basis of race or creed. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch all suggested that race-conscious
you can't gerrymander away black people's votes. That's what that means, guys, by the way. Just, you know. That's what it means. What it really means.
District lines might be unconstitutional. Now, this case hasn't been fully decided yet. The state of Louisiana has asked the Supreme Court for its ruling by early 2026. We usually see their rulings on big cases closer to the end of their terms in May or June of each year. Regardless of when we see it, though, the impact of this ruling could change this country forever. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how a post-Section 2 world might reshape midterms, who's in danger, and where I think control of Congress could tilt.
We all are in
danger. Before we get into all of that, we first need to understand a bit more about this specific Supreme Court case, as well as the history of the Voting Rights Act. Let's get into it. Detailing Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Alright, before we get into how this could change the 2026 midterms, we need to talk about what's actually on the chopping block here, because Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act sounds technical and boring, but it's one of the few remaining laws that actually forces states to treat voters equally when drawing maps. Section 2 was passed in 1965 alongside the rest of the Voting Rights Act, and it basically says you can't have voting laws or district maps that discriminate based on race. Even if the lawmakers behind it didn't intend to discriminate, the law still applies if the effect of what they did ends up diluting the power of
So if, you know, if your law was discriminating against race, it's not allowed. Meaning if it's gone, then your law, it's okay if your map is discriminating with race, you know? Just super cool and awesome in 2025.
Minority voters. In other words, if you redraw a map that takes a city with a large black or Latino population and slices it into 5 separate pieces so those voters can't meaningfully elect a candidate, that's a Section 2 violation. It's a simple idea. Your vote should count the same no matter where you live or what race you are. Now, this part of the law has been used for decades to challenge unfair maps, and it's one of the few tools left after the Supreme Court already gutted other pieces of the Voting Rights Act. In 2013, the court's decision in Shelby County versus Holder struck down the part that required states with histories of racial discrimination to get federal electoral approval before changing voting laws. That was Section 5. Once that fell, Section 2 became the main weapon civil rights groups had left. It's how cases like Allen versus Milligan in 2023 happened, the one where the court ruled Alabama had violated the act by drawing maps that weakened black voting power. That case surprised a lot of people because the conservative majority on the court actually upheld Section 2 protections. But now, just 2 years later, the court looks ready to go in the opposite direction. The case currently...
Are we invading Venezuela? Go. Chasha, you're late. You just missed the whole segment about the Venezuela shit. Basically, fucking maybe. Sure looks like it, and it's pretty fucking bad, basically. Well, what's up, dude? How you doing?
In front of them, Calais versus Louisiana could decide whether Section 2 even applies to redistricting anymore. Louisiana's argument is that the law shouldn't be used to require quote-unquote racial proportionality in maps, and that plaintiffs should have to prove intentional discrimination, not just discriminatory results. If that argument wins, and based on the justices questioning it very well could, Section 2 would be stripped of its teeth.
States could dog shit argument.
Redraw maps however they want, and unless someone admits on tape that they did it to target a racial group, there'd be no way to challenge it. That's the immediate legal story here, but the political
as long as you don't say it out loud, then you can discriminate with race as a factor. It's super cool.
Stakes are enormous. If Section 2 is gutted, state legislatures will have free reign to redraw districts without fear of being sued for racial gerrymandering. In states like Texas, where Republicans are already redrawing their congressional map to lock in new GOP-leaning districts, that would mean they could push those boundaries even further. And in states like California, which has Proposition 50 on the ballot this year to temporarily suspend its independent redistricting commission and let the legislature draw new maps, it could mean Democrats doing pretty much the exact same thing. We'd be entering an all-out map war, not just between red and blue states, but between those that even pretend to care about fair representation and those that don't. This is why people are calling it one of the most consequential cases for American democracy in decades. Important. If the court decides that Section 2 doesn't apply to redistricting, the 2026 midterms will be the first national election in more than half a century where states can draw maps without meaning.
This goes away, every state is fucking on the block for the gerrymandering shit. And like it's way easier for them to do it because the thing that's stopping like these states from a lot of these states from going all the way fucking, you know, like nuclear on this shit is that they literally can't because it's illegal because of this section of the Voting Rights Act. If it's gone, suddenly they can just get rid of all their fucking blue districts. Yeah.
Full federal oversight, and that means for millions of voters, the shape of their district could matter more than the candidate they choose. How overturning Section 2 changes map power. So let's imagine that next year the Supreme Court actually does it. They weaken or overturn Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. What happens next? Well, the short version is that the balance of power between state legislatures and the courts shifts overnight. Right now, Section 2 acts like a speed bump for lawmakers who push too far when drawing maps. It doesn't block gerrymandering entirely, but it slows it down, especially when race is clearly being used as a factor. Civil rights groups can sue, show that a map cracks or packs minority communities, and sometimes win in court. Without Section 2, though, that mechanism disappears. The only protection left would be the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, which requires proof of intentional discrimination, and that's almost impossible to prove.
So somewhere that if both Republicans and Democrats gerrymander the best possible way, Republicans gain 13 seats. Yeah, I mean, no, like this, like, if the Voting Rights Act goes, like, away, this Section 2, Republicans get like 19 seats. Like it's bad. My Zippo. What's up, Meme Gone? Good to see ya. And y'all are late getting here. What's up? How we doing? Y'all chilling?
All a state would have to say is, we drew this map for political reasons, and that would be enough to end the case, unless there was evidence to the contrary. That kind of ruling would turn redistricting into a straight power contest. Whoever controls the legislature controls the map. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, Republicans currently have full control in 23 states, compared to 15 for Democrats. That imbalance matters because most congressional districts are drawn at the state level. Take Texas, for example. As I've already kind of mentioned, lawmakers there passed a mid-decade redistricting plan that added several new GOP-leaning seats. Civil rights groups, including the NAACP, sued under Section 2, arguing that the new map weakens Latino voting power. But if Section 2 disappears, those lawsuits end. The new lines would stand even if they carve up cities like San Antonio and the Rio Grande Valley in ways that minimize Latino representation and secure more Republican seats. Over in California, meanwhile, Democrats are moving in the opposite direction politically, but using the same tools. Early voting is already underway for Proposition 50, which I just mentioned, and based on the results we've seen, it seems likely that it will pass. The goal, according to Democrats, is to regain find some national balance after what we've seen Republicans do in states like Texas and North Carolina. If Prop 50 passes and Section 2 no longer applies, California's legislature would have room to draw several new Democratic-leaning seats with little risk of a successful legal challenge. That's the reality both sides would face: the end of meaningful federal oversight on maps. States with one-party control could redraw lines to cement their...
Yeah, completely, and then you're just full, like, gerrymandered. You can just do it now.
Advantage for more than a decade. In the South, that would mean fewer majority-minority districts and fewer opportunities for Black and Latino voters to elect candidates of their choice. Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Texas, and Alabama would all see major changes, because those are the states where Section 2 has been used most often to defend minority representation. Blue states would react too. Obviously, we've already talked about California, but Illinois might tweak its districts again as well, and New York could revive its 2022 maps that were struck down for being too aggressive. Every legislature with power to act would test how far it can go, and there wouldn't be...
And they should. The Democrats at least. The Republicans should not, but Democrats, every Democrat state should start immediately figuring out how to get rid of every fucking Republican district in their fucking state. It's the moral thing to do.
Much standing in their way. So with all of that in mind, it's time to ask the main question of today's video. How does this potentially impact the 2026 midterm elections? The 2026 midterms under new maps. Okay, let's get into what happens if these new maps actually take effect. If Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is weakened, it changes the 2026 midterms entirely before the first campaigns even hit the ground running, even though some already have, but you get the idea. We'll start again with Texas, because I'd argue that's the most aggressive example right now. As I mentioned previously, lawmakers there approved a mid-decade map change this past summer that reshaped several competitive districts. According to the New York Times, the plan turns at least 3 seats that Biden carried in 2020 into safe Republican districts by cutting up urban areas and stitching them together with conservative suburbs and rural counties. Long story short, there would be fewer competitive districts and more GOP safe ones. And as I've said, civil rights groups immediately sued, but if the Supreme Court gets rid of Section 2, that lawsuit doesn't matter. Those newly engineered seats would likely stick through 2030, barring some major political earthquake. Democrats could lose up to 5 seats in Texas alone before even factoring in voter sentiment or campaign performance. Now let's look again at California, where Democrats are trying to counter that move in Texas with one of their own. If Prop 50 passes, Democrats could redraw several competitive seats in Orange County, the Central Valley, and even parts of San Diego to favor their incumbents. Early analysis from the New York Times shows the proposal could shift 4 to 6 seats leftward, largely by consolidating Democratic voters who are currently split between multiple districts. If Section 2 no longer applies, there would be almost no federal oversight on how that's done. This creates kind of a mirror effect in red and blue states. In a Section 2 world, states could only go so far before courts would step in. In a post-Section 2 world, the only limit is how shameless you're willing to be. I even saw someone float a hypothetical map on X that would allow California to redraw 52 blue seats and basically hand all of their representatives to Democrats. That's probably not going to happen, but it could be technically possible. And Texas and California aren't the only ones. Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana would almost certainly
Bro, don't even fucking say that. I can only get so hard. Oh my god, you... That fucking map is just so glorious.
In Louisiana's case,
hold on. That map, oh my god, bro. I can only get so hard. God, don't. I gotta move past this.
California to redraw 52 blue seats and basically hand all of their representatives to Democrats. That's probably not going to happen, but it could be technically possible. And Texas and California aren't the only ones. Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana would almost certainly redraw again if given the chance. In Louisiana's case, the state has already hinted that if it wins, it'll revert to its old single majority black map. That's another potential Democratic loss right there. North Carolina is another one to watch. The Republican legislature there has already passed maps that could give the GOP an advantage in 10 of the state's 14 congressional districts. Democrats are suing under Section 2 and state-level constitutional claims. If Section 2 falls, those challenges become a lot weaker. All told, we'd be looking at a House map where 8 to 10 seats that might otherwise lean Democratic instead become safely Republican. And it wouldn't be because of campaigns or messaging or turnout, but because the lines where voters live changed. And when you consider that Republicans currently hold a razor-thin majority, that's enough to secure control of the House through at least 2030. But the effects wouldn't all cut one way either. As I've said, states like Illinois and New York would also likely redraw maps of their own if Section 2 and related precedents fall away. Illinois could shore up some of its Chicago area districts to make them nearly impossible for Republicans to win. And some New York Democrats have already floated the idea of reviving the gerrymander that was struck down in 2022. Without Section 2 in place, they'd have a much easier time defending it in court. So we'd have two simultaneous trends: red states expanding their control in the South and Sun Belt, and blue states locking in their dominance along the coast. The problem is that these moves don't cancel out each other neatly because the population growth that's driving new seats is mostly happening in red states. This means the GOP's map advantage scales faster than the Democrats' ability to offset it elsewhere. For voters, the difference would be immediate. The number of competitive House districts, which already dropped from about 90 in 2012 to fewer than 40 in 2024, according to Cook Political Report, could fall into the 20s. Fewer swing seats means fewer races where voters can actually change outcomes. Most Americans would live in districts where the winner of the race is decided months before Election Day. And for minority voters, the change would be even sharper. Majority minority districts could be split apart, either by cracking communities across multiple white majority seats or by packing them so tightly together that their influence outside those boundaries disappears. And that's not a hypothetical either. That's exactly how states like Texas and Georgia drew maps before the Voting Rights Act was ever put in place. So when we talk about the 2026 midterms, arguably the biggest story here isn't about which party has the momentum or how people feel about the economy, but what the maps will even look like. If Section 2 falls, we'll be entering the first national election in nearly 60 years where states can draw districts without any real federal constraint. Considering that, I'm now going to try to make some sort of prediction as to how this midterm season may go. Let's get into it. Trying to predict the 2026 midterms. I'll be honest, I know I just said I'm going to try to make some prediction, but I can't give you a specific prediction right now. There's just too much going on and it's way too early to say how things may go. I lied to you, my dear viewer. I'm very sorry. But anyways, if the Supreme Court weakens Section 2, we'll enter an election cycle where the guardrails around fair representation are loose enough that most states could get away with almost anything. The lawsuits will keep coming, but the precedent will already be gone. And the practical reality is that the maps we have now may not be the ones we're going to vote on next year. That kind of change doesn't cause a single headline-grabbing shift, but it will cause a slow structural tilt, the kind that shows up in the numbers months later when people realize how few seats were ever competitive to begin with. At the same time, Donald Trump has been pulling more of the federal government under his control. The Department of Justice has gone quiet on many cases that might make the White House look bad. Where are the Epstein files? And has also begun prosecuting some of Trump's former political opponents. Immigration enforcement has become one of the administration's favorite tools for projecting authority. The nationwide ICE raids that started in late summer haven't slowed down, and they've sparked protests that are now being met with a noticeably heavier hand. There's also been talk from within Trump's orbit about invoking the Insurrection Act if the protests keep coming, something that hasn't been used in this country since the early 1990s and never on this kind of scale. Trump even said in a recent interview with Fox News when asked about sending federal troops to San Francisco, quote, "Don't forget, I can use the Insurrection Act. 50% of the presidents almost have used that, and that's unquestioned power. I choose not to, I'd rather do this, but I'm met constantly by fake politicians who think it's not like part of the radical left movement to have safety. These cities have to be safe." All of this means the 2026 midterms won't play out in a normal environment. They'll happen under a government that is actively consolidating power, while the legal frameworks that usually keep elections fair are being stripped down. It's the kind of moment where process matters as much as policy, because the people who control the process are starting to shape it to fit their needs. Republicans could gain anywhere from 5 to 10 seats in the House without running better campaigns or winning new voters. Those aren't projections based on polling, they're baked into geography and math. That's why I think the 2026 midterms will look less like a national referendum and more like a controlled test of how much influence one party can lock in before the next redistricting cycle. The maps, the courts, and the machinery of the federal government are all moving in the same direction.
They're just
It's
gonna be
slow,
checking
procedural,
if
and
their maps fucking work, and then yeah, it's pretty fucking bad.
Hard to dramatize, but it's how real power consolidates, and it is seriously concerning. Like the downfall of what this country was founded on concerning. If Section 2 somehow survives intact, the damage is limited. The courts will still be there to slow down the worst impulses, and the maps may shift a little more gradually. But if the Supreme Court rules that Section 2 doesn't apply to redistricting, we will cross a line that is hard to uncross. The 2026 midterms will take place on a field designed by the same people playing the game, and the results will reflect that design. And when that happens, the outcome next November won't feel like a choice made by the voters. It'll feel like something that was decided months earlier when the maps were drawn, the rules were rewritten, and the last real checks on power started to give way. And unfortunately, to me right now, it feels like we may be headed down that path. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. If you enjoyed or learned something new, please feel free to like and subscribe. More videos coming soon. If you're interested in learning more about anything I talked about today, please feel free to check out my sources in the description down below. I'd highly recommend doing so, as they may shine some more light on some of the points I made throughout this video. Finally, if you're interested, remember to go check out my newsletter and my Substack if you want. I'm looking for any feedback there whatsoever. If you love it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. Everything's appreciated. Thank you so much for all your continued support. I really appreciate it. Hope I see you next time. Take care.
And with that, I think it'll be a new stream because I am pretty fucking tired. To be real. If somebody's got like a short thing they want to watch, then maybe we can watch that. But I'm EP. EP. Oh boy. Look at those emotes. Cha-cha. Maybe gone. Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Probably go live tomorrow. Watch some news or play some games, whatever. Yeah. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate y'all, and see you guys next stream. Oh, we're gonna... Nah. Alright. See you guys. Bye.